Hi, and welcome to this module. In this module, we'll look at how we can test SAP Cloud Integration and what kind of settings, areas you can use around this. So let's get started. So preparation, you need to have an iFlow that you can easily trigger with Postman or by the backend application. Or it could be a file system, file transfer, putting data into it. That should be easy to do. And then, it's a lot easier to create a test case on something that you can trigger automatically. But obviously, as you scale this, you don't really need this. But yeah, to help you try it out, this is the best way. So testing, the way we are doing testing is, we test the iFlows. We use record replay that allows us to take data from a running scenario, send the same data into a new environment, and check it produces the same result. We do have mocking of iFlows that allow us to actually mock the endpoint instead of invoking them. This makes it a lot easier for you to test a lot of the different scenarios that you have where you're using strange endpoints. You can reuse the test cases in unit tests and so when you're doing multiple different kind of tests, you can group these in different ways. We have ability to test with MPL attachment, persistent messages, and data store entries. And then we also have a confidential data testing that allow you to mask the data for users. Not sure if that's relevant in a CPI context, but for instance, if you have HR data, you do not want developers to be able to see these ones. This could be confidential data. We do have a package that we have created. If you want to test process direct, and the way you do that is you just go to your CPI tenant, and once you have set up the landscape, it is really easy to just go to the tenant. You go to the discover. It is not something I don't do that often. And go to the Figaf, search for Figaf connector here for Figaf. You go here, you select copy. Now it will copy this as the way we have. And in our integration artifacts now, connector for Figaf DevOps tool, we have it here. We can then deploy these ones, and you need this one if you want to do some testing with the backend. You also just need to deploy this. So now we have installed this component, which is good, and now we can actually test. So if we have scenarios that are using Process Direct, it will call this endpoint and send the messages through that scenario. So that was pretty easy. But how do we actually create a test case, and why do we actually do this? So whenever we test as integration developers, it's often a bit complicated to be able to test together with the business, be able to use this data and send data again. I've a lot of time been sitting together with a business person that helped me test some of these scenarios. They got tired from time to time. I had other things to do, and then I could not really test these things. So I would go into WE19 to resend an IDOC, which is okay as a way to test, but I had no clue about if it would produce the correct result. So I could obviously check the data that I had. In some scenarios, we just checked with the message that failed, and that was okay. When we ran with productive data, we did not anticipate, forgot that some of these data do not have this extra data. We should find a way to fix that and make modifications to it. So those are the things that's the reason why you want to have test cases in. And being able to decouple yourself with the testing from the business makes it a lot easier for you, because as a developer, you can go in and you can create test cases, you can run them anytime you like. That also means that the next developer that needs to support this integration can actually debug and check what you have created instead of going asking the business what is it that do, what kind of messages you have. If you have all the different type of messages, it is really easy to create this in this way. We use the record replay, fetch data from an existing iFlow, send them in, and then we can actually compare the results. To create test cases, it is pretty easy. You find the iFlow, select the message you want to record, and then you're good to go. But let me show you what this looks like. And then we have a simple one front, that's okay. Cool. So here we have the tool. We can go, there's different ways we can go around this. So we can start here on the integration page. We can select an iFlow, a test case we want to create. We can select it here, and we can then open. We do have here, it's a normal iFlow that we want to test. And we have two different ways we can test it on. One is if we're just working around with the GUI and want to create a test case, we would go and ensure that the iFlow is in trace mode. We can use CPI helper here. We will check the messages that exist, and then we will go and we'll send a new message to the specific interface. And we should then hopefully see it here. We now see a new message, and we can see what message has been processed, where it goes. If we want to check this in the Figaf tool, we simply just say click here, create a new one, new test. We also have an option here to have partner expressions and master data or message data, and we'll just create a test message. So it can use XPath in the incoming document to determine what type of message this is. We also have different ways to improve this. We have ordering, etc. We'll just say create. And then this will connect to the CPI tenant, fetch all the relevant metadata that exist. And now we have it. So depending on the size and scope, it can take a little time for you to create these ones. We also have, when we're creating the recording, we have a number of different attributes. We can select here, collect additional attributes if we want to have persistent method, data store entries, and MPL attachments. Then they will be added to the test case. Okay. So now we have the message here. And we actually have a test case. We can go in here and we can view the details. So we can see the input message. We can see all the output steps here. Let me just do one small change here. So in this data here, I can go in, I can modify and set this JSON here, training. You can do this, and we can also see the data store entries here. They're relevant. If we want to check something like that. So just press save. And we close this window. So now we can go back. We can create this as a test case. It says here we can run it on this scenario. If we had other system in the landscape, we could also run it there. So now we can run it. And it will run all the different test data inside of here. So we can press run here. That will then allow us to run it on the given system we have. We can select run on. That will then allow it to run on some other scenarios we have. To see the data of it, we can go to the last testing result. We can also go from here, click here. That will show us the test case. Here we can see the input messages. We have some anonymization. And here we can actually see the testing result that has been processed for this scenario. So we can view the result, and here the main thing is that once you see this, you'll see, okay, we don't have any data running here. So you can select here message run. Here, if you would see if there were problems with sending messages in, so if the iFlow were not deployed, you had wrong credentials, or to the API message sent, you will see the details in here. Then we can pull the messages, and then we'll fetch all of these different messages after it has processed them. There is also a way you can go in and activate scheduling, so it will automatically pull these messages once it has processed. So this is on the agent setting. On the agent we have enable message polling that will enable message monitoring polling. So enabling these will make it a lot easier to start these things. I think that's not that one, but let's just skip it. So now we have a test case, we run it, it is completed, but we got some errors. So let's check these errors. So the easiest way is to filter it by the last step, and then we will go here and we will do the diff here. So first off, when we're sending data, there can be this expire date items that change for one or another reason, and they always do, and you just need to be cautious that they change and it's not a big problem. So you go and add them to the ignore list. Then we can process a comparison. This will then check all of the different messages again and see if everything is successful. So we can see we're getting an error here. Let's check what this error is. If we check the diff, we can see we got one here that it was, we were expecting phone to be trending, but the phone number was this number here. And for this scenario it is okay because we made a change just so we can see what happened if we change some of the input parameters here. We will get a different output out here. So we can go in and we can create and say, okay, let's update and use the last expected message as the result. This way we always have valid test cases and data that we can use whenever we are testing with this. So if I go back here to the test scenario, and this is the preferred way I would be testing, I'll go here, I'll then check here, view the result, pull the messages. Now it's probably not been processed yet. And yeah, for last data set, it does make a little sense. But let me show you some tricks later where we can go through and show, okay, how does this look? So now we can see all of them is successful. So we are happy with this. So some pointers you can see here is that we have obviously here about the result, how the message ran. We can get some data about the iFlow, and we can see the iFlow that has been processed in here. If you have CPI help on, it is also super easy to go in and then see, okay, how did that iFlow process? Were there anything that I did not expect from it? So from a developer perspective, adding this just makes it easier to go back and forth, try to run it and see with the data that you're getting. Okay. Now, apply the open the test configuration. Here we can see these ignoring properties that we have in the system. And yeah, we can also ignore elements in the content if we just say, okay, these does not matter for this specific case. So that was one test case on this specific object. We then have this in our test chute here, and that means we can always from our test chute run this specific test case. We can look at the last running result. So we have not run it from here yet, so we will need to do that, and then we can see all the different results. We can download these data and see what is going on, etc. So if we run it again, it obviously takes some time for it to process and download and view the data in here. Okay. So that was one of the ways that we had. We could just go in here and we could, from CPI helper, say we want clicking on the Figaf logo or the Figaf icon to create this as a test case. But what about the other case? We can also do it the other way around, where we start with the same iFlow. We can say record messages, or we could use it in a new one. Let's just do it a new one. So we'll do here record messages, We'll add it to the same test case. We can go in and specify some different strategies here. So let's open, you will only use finishing and run step. So that means that it will not test everything, but just this specific input. We need the license. And now I will send a message into this iFlow. So let's just get the input here. I guess this is actually not deployed yet. We just need to deploy it. Just a sec. So now the iFlow has started. I have sent in 2 messages on it. When you start the recording from here, the Figaf tool will handle that it fetches the correct data. And we can now pull the messages. And here we are noticing that we just get 1 inbound message and 2 outbound messages. But if we look at the iFlow up here, wow, we're getting some number range errors. So now I actually fixed this number range issue, and we can pull the messages again and added a new one, and we got 1 and 3 outbound messages. If we look at the last one that has been processed, we can see it is then using the full flow. This was actually an interesting case because we would then, once we run it, actually expect some different results, and some of this that will not work out. So now we can create this as a test case. And now in our test case, we do have 2 items. We can go in here, we can run the result on this one. And we just need to check that it should have the only use finish and run step. That makes sense that we switched it to that. So let's see here the result, build the result. And we can pull the messages. So I think this means that normally is already something that has been processed. And here we are, I guess it has been run with the original setting. So we can go back, we can run it again. And I think this is obviously something you'd experience, that you need to rerun the test case when you have changed some of the parameters. Because it is just differently. So let's see if it has been processed correctly. So one of them was processed. So we got some unexpected result, and that is also what we would expect, because we are getting one here that says error. If we look at this one, look at the diff here, we can see we get the same ignore header, and then I guess this is the application ID, this is the number range we ran into problems with. And then for these other ones, we are also receiving, we received an unexpected end event 2, which is the real end event, and we did not receive the unexpected end event 54. So we can go in, we can delete all of these different cases, and I think this is process. The idea is to update all the different test cases, drop all the messages. So let me just see here, just like we will select the received one, select, update, drop all, and let's process it again and see if it is better now. So it is, some of these times you need to update the test cases when you receive some of these unexpected results. So now I guess we deleted all the other ones, so we should have expected all the end event 2 message processes. Let's see if we get it. So now it does compare successfully. We can also, I guess, so you have a number of different options in this perspective when you're running the tests this way. I think let's see what the next one is. So this was the creation. We have the running. You need to make sure you have the same setup of parameters. When we're processing this, we do use the camel indexes, the 2 different indexes that we try to keep, to make sure that that the payloads are current. You can, if you have multiple other ones, there is this order expression that you can use to define order expression. Say, okay, this is what we want to do here. And you should use that on both the recording and the sending part. We have created shared configuration, and this is if you want to create a different way of running a specific test case on. So it can match partner configuration, etc. So let's see, we got this number 2 test case here. We have a number of different functions on it. We can go here and we can view the result, and we can create a extract data source and use a new one. So we can link and duplicate test cases in this way. Skip only successful one. So we can create new test cases in this way, copy them. I think we probably have selected it. Extract data source new. So now we actually have one of them is a projection on number 1. So in this test case, we can use a shared configuration on this. And shared configuration is a way for us to run the same test case on multiple different scenarios. We can either use the message partner expression, or we can say we just want to use it on a specific test case, and then we'll select the one we have here, or an iFlow, etc. We will run this with mock endpoint, so it will be using our mock services to run this. If you need to set up mock services, you need to set up a Cloud Connector. This is a boot up parameter that you need to apply to it. If you run it in BTP Cloud Foundry, it is included in the setup. But yeah, we have not added it here, but I'll just show you on the other system what this shared look like. So now we have a shared configuration for this one. So if we go back to our test suite, select it and run it, I'll just run all of it. If we click on this specific one we created here with the projection case, we can see here it is still on the same system, but now it is using this service called Figaf mock. And this means here we're calling with HTTP, and if we look at the URL here, it is using the URL of the Figaf server. So it is possible to add these attributes and a way to make sure you are fetching the correct data. And we're using these endpoints to make sure we fetch all of the correct data that you are needing here. So here we can see it's using this shared configuration. This would obviously not run because we do not have the Cloud Connector running, so it will fail. If we pull it, we'll get some skipped messages, and I guess we will get a lot of unreceived messages, or it's not, yeah, we're getting this error here. Could not send the message to the HTTP channel. Anyway, the idea I wanted to show you here was that you could set up shared configuration and run multiple different test cases with different data, with different setup of data in the shared configuration. Yeah, but yeah, running the mocked service with CPI really is simple, and you can see it was just a simple configuration we needed to check. You also have that on the normal setup, but yeah, you need to match which of the different scenarios does make sense for your specific case. I guess an IDOC, ignore XML attributes, use expression. So there's a lot of different setups that we can do here, and we can see this on the different iFlows that it's using, navigating back and forth. Seeing the testing results is just so much easier here. Let's see if it pulls it. Just get skipped because it is not sending any messages to it. So that was the mark part. I think that was, yes. The cool thing about having these is you can either go in and you can do on a test suite here. If you take your test suite, you can set it up and you can go here, edit, schedule it, send an email by report, save it. And that means you, on the agent level, you can, or is it on application level? I think maybe on application level, you can go in and set the test suite runner to run the save button down here. So now at 2 o'clock at night it will run, send the same messages through, and we will get the results in our email inbox. We obviously need to have set up the SMTP information for us to receive this this data. And we can get the notifier that will then run a couple of minutes later, and cleaner. There's a lot of different jobs you can set up to make sure you have this data. But once you have a test case, the cool thing is that you can use it when you're transporting update. So let's say I have the iFlow number 2 here. Let's see if I can find the iFlow here. I want to create a transport verb search test. I will select it on my landscape, dev to QA. I'll select request a transport license or DevOps license for the specific object, add it. And now when I go to the test cases, I can look up all the different test cases I have. I can select them and I can then run them. And this just makes it so much easier for you to run the test cases. Make sure you always have valid results because they are just updated automatically whenever you are working with these things. And obviously we have one where it is run with the mock, so we can check here the view of the result. This is running via the mock. We are getting some of the messages here. But I guess, and then some unexpected ones, and here we have the view result here, where I also would expect that we will fit the data. It's just in queue. So here we can see we're getting one successful message, and that means that as a architect, you can go in here and you can say, okay, when you're approving a transport, check, do they actually have test cases on these scenarios? Are they updated? Are they current? Because then next time someone is making changes to a given iFlow, they always have valid test data to handle these scenarios. So this is really a simple way to check. We have pull messages out here. But now we can see this one is successful. The other one is failing because we did not have the Cloud Connect up and running. I think that was all we needed to cover in this session. So now you have an idea about what is the complexity, how much different scenarios can you create. The shared configuration can give you this other ability. There's the record only messages, specific messages, and I think you can also, when you're recording messages or selecting messages to record, so if we create here a new test case, record messages here, we can also go in and we can actually just specify it's this step and this step I'm interested in, all the other one I don't care about. And then we need to create a shared configuration that covers this specific setup so we can make sure everything is valid. So that was what I wanted to cover in this testing video. I hope you found it interesting. Do also check some of the other videos out if you have not seen them yet. Thanks for watching.